The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests of this show do not represent their employing agency, department, or organization. All information should be regarded as anecdotal, contextual, and educational, and should not be misinterpreted as legal or medical advice. Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm joined by Captain Kory Flowers. Kory, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, Garrett. I'm looking forward to this conversation, pal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate a lot of what you've put out. We've shared some ideas and talking about the career, the policing profession, and the ups and downs, the bumps. And so this is an episode where the working title is Keeping the Faith and staying engaged. And I think it's more relevant than ever. We
Yes,
have so many awesome newer men and women that have come in and they've gotten through some really hard times. They've helped us get us through some really hard times
that's
since
right.
2020 and beyond. But at the same time, the challenges don't slow down, do they?
Yeah, that's right. No, this is an ever evolving profession, which is what makes it the best job in the world. I mean, I approach this job the same way I did when I started 27 years ago. This is the greatest job in the world. There was an old quote from the author of The Great Gatsby, and he said, "Policing effectively gives folks a riotous excursion with
Mm,
privileged glimpses into the human heart." And that's exactly what we're doing, man. I mean, that's kind of hard to beat, right? We see things that folks don't get to see, and that's why they make all the movies and the TV shows about this great profession. But yeah, it's challenging, man. I mean, social media with its promises of bringing us all together has done the opposite for the most thing, and we catch a lot of that detritus. It's a challenge, man, for sure. Yeah, what you said is very true.
yeah. What is the author? That's like F. Scott Fitzgerald,
Fitzgerald, very
Gatsby.
good. Yeah, one of the great
Yeah.
American novels. That's right.
And I had to read that in grade school, but I should revisit it. Yeah. I think that there's just so much. Yeah, we don't need to go down the literary rabbit hole. I think that there's so much that you can take away from even themes of that story that come to mind.
Yes.
Kind of being on the outside and looking in, and like it makes me think about purpose. It makes me think about values.
Yeah, for sure. I say all the time, mercifully, we're all different, right? I always talk about this. My sister is a nurse. She was a labor and delivery nurse for about a decade, and she was so great at it and such a pro. And I could never in a trillion years imagine doing that job. Like if it was up to me to propagate, assisting with the ongoing of the human race, it just wouldn't happen. But she was great at it. The same way young men and women that are drawn into this trade, into this profession, are uniquely called and skilled to do it. And then they represent the razor thin dividing line between chaos and civil society. And that's a miracle. And we're so ungrateful not to realize that and think about that all the time. Like we should be so grateful to that. It's miraculous, truly.
Yeah. I really appreciate that, how you say it so poignantly because it is true. Like, we think about the fabric of society and without policing, without law enforcement, and it's not to like pat ourselves on the back, but it is to be proud of this larger calling, this larger cause.
That's right.
And I think that sometimes we get it all mixed up because of the day-to-day grind. And if we take a moment, we can think about why we came in and how we felt when we were coming through the initial
That's right.
the original crucible, right? Like of testing and like vying for this thing and getting ready and academy and field
Yep.
training. And
Yep.
then it doesn't take that long, unfortunately, it seems, especially these days, before somebody, whether you want to call it salty or just a little bit cynical. I love hearing that positive resolve that you're sharing. I try to maintain it too. However, I will admit, as I have before, it's you have to be super intentional about it. It
You do.
slips away really easily.
Yeah. And there's ways to, I won't say hack that, but there are ways to do this career, in my estimation, in as positive a way as possible. And one of those that's very important. I mean, my wife and I have 3 kids. I tell them the same thing is very, very, very tactically choose your small circle of, I call it a tribe, like very
Mhm.
small. There's nothing wrong with having a bunch of friends, but your tribe of folks that you surround yourself with that tribe is very hard to get into, and then you protect it diligently. I've got 5 or 6 pals of mine who are my tribe, and they have permission and access to chastise me, to challenge me, to, to call me when I'm being lazy or, and same with them, like, I rub off of them. And it's very important because that culture that you choose to surround yourself with is super important. But, again, just the miraculous nature of the young folks that it's very easy to detract from this profession. It's kind of a national pastime, right? And just like Teddy Roosevelt said, it's truly not the critic who counts. They don't count.
Hmm.
I've said before, like, if you have a problem with me, text me. And if you don't have my number, I'm probably okay not having your 2 cents. And that's okay too, right? But I was talking to a friend of mine recently in 2020 that you alluded to earlier. I was a watch commander here in the city. So our city's we're the third largest city in North Carolina. We've got about 300,000 citizens, about 600 cops, give or take. And we experienced 2020 like everybody else. The city was metaphorically and actually on fire. True disaster. Like a lot of people thought like the American experiment is all over, like it's done. And so we were out on the front lines for especially that first 5 to 7 nights when it was truly like a bad movie. And I saw buildings burning. I saw our young officers getting bottles thrown at them, shot at, screamed at, cursed at for hours and hours and hours in the middle of the summer in North Carolina, which is like it's like living inside a mouth. I mean, it's just oppressively hot. And then, but what was wild is every single day after these young people worked 16, 18-hour days, some of them slept at the PD, they came back every day. And I remember seeing that and being greatly encouraged by that. Conversely, if you think about normal people, just a normal person, if you called your local shoe store and you talked to a shoe salesman, you said, look, pal, just so you know, tomorrow at the shoe store, you're going to have a riot. People are going to light stuff on fire. They're going to be throwing bottles at you and screaming all manner of invective. The next day, that guy would not come to work because that guy's
No.
normal, right? That's a normal
Yeah.
reaction.
It'd be
But
asinine. Yeah.
mercifully, we don't attract normal people into this profession, thankfully.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot you said, and maybe I'll keep going on that thread and then go back to something. But when you're talking about the riots and protests that happened all over the place, and yeah, it's pretty jarring. And I think that sometimes those of us that work through those years, we kind of put it behind us. Someone was talking about COVID the other day, this past week, and I was like, that feels surreal. It feels like a really strange dream. It doesn't
Yes.
feel like it happened. But then we think about the riots, and I was on a regional civil disturbance team leader, and for those first couple days, we were like in Seattle, and that was like it was like a video game. We say like in this like me and my buddies that were there, like it was so like the distortion, and we're like, is this real? Is this really
Right.
happening?
Yes.
The amount of mayhem and just destruction and just super frustrating, right, to say the least. And then going zigzagging between different cities because of this is this mall's getting sacked and this one's getting looted and this one's brewing up, and the agencies kind of having to divide up from this regional team to say, hey, everyone has to protect the home front.
Yes.
Just jarring and nuts. However, one thing you said, and you're talking about like the civilian, and I was actually recalling how so many people in my circles were so beside themselves, and they wish that there was something that they could do. And I
Yes.
think that's a piece that we forget a lot too, because the minority, the loud corrosive minority, right, the critic, as you're talking about, like versus in the man in the arena, that's someone that we give a lot of platform to. However,
Yes.
sometimes we think about our critics, and I think kind of like what you said, it makes me think about the adage where, do we want to actually regard advice from those people? And generally it's no, right? Generally they're not living in a way that we would say, yeah, I want to seek and solicit their feedback.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I think a good mantra for life is, and this is easier said than done. I recognize that. However, I tell the young guys all the time, never accept criticism from somebody that you would not ask advice for.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get
Yeah.
at.
That's an easy question. Like, if I wouldn't reach out to you proactively to ask for advice, I'm not going to accept your criticism. Or, a lot of the young folks get really bent out of shape about, secondhand or third hand criticism. I heard so and so said that heard so. No, guys, we're not doing that. If a person wants to come into your space and have a civil conversation, I'll gladly hear that. But I'm not willing to take. We do that in law enforcement a lot. for reasons unknown is, we're like the crabs at the bottom of the pot, just pulling each other back into
Yeah.
boiling water. And it is
Yeah.
a national pastime. It's super cheap and it's fully counterproductive. I think about a lot of times, again, social media, I've intentionally never been on it. I don't have a profile on the planet because I know myself and I would not want to put that into my psyche, right? I mean, I think this is nuts. Think about, we call it a feed, like a feed.
Mm.
So you have to be very intentional what you feed yourself physically, like eating food. Same way with what you're feeding into your ear pathways and your sight pathways. Like, what do you want to let into your spirit, your soul, your emotions, your personality, however you see that? We need to be more wise with what we let in my.
Yeah, it goes back to intention, and we'll go out of order, but folks, you can find Kory on LinkedIn. So I feel like that's a safer place as far as like a quote unquote social media platform.
Yeah.
It's probably the most productive one that I am privy to. But yeah, I love how the theme of intention, right? Because we kind of came into it like, how do you navigate all the hardship? How do you navigate all the struggle? And we'll get into a little bit more of the specifics there. But so far, you've recognized several things that I really align with. One is be mindful of your environment, right? Be mindful, I say, as your inputs. And the first one you said off the bat, the big one is like, who are your inner circle, right? We
Yes,
are the product of the people we spend the most time with.
for
And
sure.
sometimes that gets really slippery because at work you may not be able to choose who you quote unquote interact with the most, but then you got to build some boundaries, maybe some emotional guardrails so that people aren't sucking you down like the crabs in the pot, because that is unfortunately so pervasive in policing, but really any group, right? When things are bad, like misery loves company, and
Yes,
trying to
yeah.
rise above that.
Yeah, it's cheaper, it's always cheaper to be negative, it's always cheaper and easier, nothing's invested to criticize other folks, but, I wrote an article a couple years back just about, inside our culture and how that is so prevalent is us for whatever reason, if somebody this is crazy, somebody outside of the profession criticizes our profession, we will all band together and jump on that guy's back and, defend each other. In the meantime, inside the house, folks are, silly, building alliances and egos and self-serving and dogging each other. I've said forever, I fantasize about a world in which all of our problems are out there. Just
Hmm.
crime. Crime is afoot. I've said that forever. Crime's afoot. It's afoot right now, and it's not in this building. If we had only and all of our resources, all of our mental resources could only go to just fighting crime, and helping the community, and it didn't have to be spent in here trying to watch our own backs, it would be a beautiful, much more beautiful place. Definitely.
You're speaking my language, man, because that is one of my biggest pet peeves right now. When we talk about what do we need to talk about or identify or what challenge do we need to get over, it's not out there, right? Like it's in our building, it's in our
Yes.
ranks, it's in our hallways. It's what you're just saying about the rumor mill. I mean, a lot of times, yeah, like say it directly to me if you have feedback or criticism, whatever. But at the same time, a lot of it's not even true just because people like the drama. So even if it wasn't a dog or a dig, somebody might just take that and be like, "Hey, I heard Kory said this about tongue," right? Like, and because the
Sure.
cynicism, and there's this book, I think it's Jamil Zaki, but he talks about how it's it feels like it's helpful, right? It feels like it's helpful to vent and process, but really you're
Yes.
basically you're conditioning yourself to live in that. And for
Yes.
some reason, like we just cannot get past that. And you're right, there is plenty of crime out there.
Yeah.
We're not it's not like a small town bougie suburb problem that's the only ones with rumors. It's everywhere. It's some of the
Yes.
biggest cities with the biggest like crime spikes, but still we're in this swirl regardless.
Yeah. And the article I alluded to earlier, but let your words pass a couple tests before you send them. Cause like words like an arrow, once you release it, it is sent and it can do great damage. It can, it can bolster folks and, encourage folks, but a lot of times it can do great damage. And, a couple of the questions like, is what you're hearing true before you think about passing it on? What a novel question. Is this true? Right? Well, I don't know. Maybe it is. If it is, say the second layer is it necessary that I relay this to somebody? I would be willing to bet it probably does not pass that test. And then finally, if it passes those two tests, is it kind? What a novel
Mm,
idea. Is it kind? We can think about being kind to one
yes.
another. I mean, if you think about the revolution that would create if we just thought like, is this kind what I'm saying? Well, then I should shut up. Maybe I shouldn't speak. That's okay too.
Yeah, I I love that you said that. Okay, I'm curious if you can track back to where you heard this concept because I remember it on like in a firehouse training room. It was up on a sign and it was something that somebody had quoted and I believe he had passed in
Yes.
service. But I remember reading that as a younger officer being like, huh, and then as I continued to dive into organizational wellness and talk about culture and the things that we can do as leaders of all levels, I recalled that and I was like, man, how many times do we just say the dumb thing? We basically fire off the angry email or we say the thing in our head that we should probably just, as you identified, just sit with for a moment.
Yeah. And it's a good question. I don't know who know, honestly, man, I say this all the time. Nothing is new under the sun.
No.
Everything that I digest and pass along is all stolen from somebody, whether it's the Bible or good Southern common sense or kindness or my kindergarten teacher. I don't know, but it like that. Like you could run for mayor with a platform like that. That's such a simple kindergarten idea that we forget. And instead, we get the little dopamine rush when we hear some juicy piece of negative gossip. And instead of even thinking about it, we relay it. It's not wise. I don't care if you work at Walmart or McDonald's or you're a cop, like it's just not wise. That could revolutionize a work environment if we just thought about relaying what we're thinking about relaying.
Yeah. You remind
Yeah.
me how many years you have in policing now?
Yeah, so I started in the 90s, in '99. However, I get to say the 9 so this
Yeah.
is year 27. So I'm sitting on, the year 27. I've got about a year-ish until I can have a new chapter and be done here. So, yeah, I'm in the dawn's early light here, almost done.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I love highlighting that because you have some time on me. However, it's like, as much as we're talking in this positive, constructive frame, I think it is something that's meaningful that we need to elevate the voices and the people that are, carrying that positivity, right? We need to demonstrate it's very possible, it's very practical,
Yes.
and it's not easy. I'm curious if that's always been a thing for you, like just looking at the bright side and being constructive, or are there times in your career that it was slipping away where you had to recapture that?
Yeah, sure. And again, everybody's built differently. Everybody's got a different psychological bend. I have always been an optimistic person, and the mindset, and that helps to a degree. But like you said, then life brushes up against an optimist just the same as it does a pessimist or a realist. Yeah, and when life hits, and you have those, I mean, it's going to be hard. That will serve you well for a while. But I've always told, like we tell our kids, we tell the young men that we mentor we have a young men mentoring program called Run Well that we founded a couple years ago, and we tell them the same thing. Look, lesson one, day one, life's hard. Start there. Life is hard. We're not sugarcoating anything. That's the way it is in policing. That's the way it is in just in general living in life. Life is hard. It's really hard. And because there's always an and, you're tougher, right? You have a choice to make. We enter every day with an option. Like we're going to believe something. When your feet hit the floor out of the bed every day, you're going to believe something about the day. So why not choose to believe the optimistic thing? Like I tell our kids at the breakfast table, a lot of times my wife and I are having breakfast before we break for the day and send everybody in different directions. And we tell, who knows, this may be the greatest Tuesday ever or the greatest Thursday ever. It may be. It could be. Like there could be some really neat things right around the corner. A lot of it has to do with your perspective. Sometimes, again, reality bumps in, and it's not the case. But a lot of times we have the choice on what we do with our day. So here's the example. Think about this. I've got a friend, I don't even remember who said this, but there are different levels, like degrees of fun in the world, right? He said, I wish I knew who said this. He said, like the cheapest fun, the lowest level of fun is like going to an amusement park, right? You pay your $70, you go ride a roller coaster. And that was great fun. But you never in 10 years hear anybody say, hey, remember that day 10 years ago when we rode that roller? Nobody says that because it's low level fun. The highest level of fun involves typically some kind of pain, struggle, hardship, like a really bad day. Think about the 15-hour call out in the rain. Think about like a real hard workout with your friends where you thought you were going to throw up and you just wanted it to end. But you talk about that for decades, right? That was high grade fun. So again, a lot of life is how you frame it. It's what you choose to believe about it. And you can, you really build great friendships and create great memories in the middle of what a lot of people would say is objective hardship, struggle, difficulty, pain. You can frame that. You're not bending reality, but you do have a choice in how you see those things. Very important.
Yeah, it's earned, right? The
Sure.
latter. It's something that you earned.
That's right. Yeah, for
Yeah, I
sure.
think that it's the it's basically that fun you never wanna have again, right? It might be like a boot camp, academy type of situation. It's the grind. Yeah, I definitely resonate with that. Ah, totally okay. So I would say I'm a recovering, cynic or realist. I remember being a kid, like, super realist, like, that doesn't make any sense, and,
Yeah.
if this was true, then how can this be true too? However, I find that maybe through the last couple decades, it's just much more it's just much nicer to look at things on the bright side or
Yes.
check yourself and do that reframe.
That's right.
And an example I have that you what you just said is belief, right? I wrote down believe here as you were speaking because recently I had this work project and all my sergeants are all they're frustrated, right? They don't like this idea. The officers don't like it. And when I'm sitting with it because I've been part of this process, I'm like, you know what? If you believe it's gonna suck, then I'm pretty sure you're right. Like it
Yep.
probably will. But if you
Yes.
believe that there could be pros and cons, some that we don't even see, and some opportunities and a lot of learning, and we might find a new plan that's kind of hybridized from this and the old way, even
Yes.
better than we imagined, then is that not possible?
That's
And I
right.
think that that's the key thing. And I mean, time and time again, the power of belief, whether it's Viktor Frankl or a lot of these really impactful authors, philosophers, psychologists,
Yes.
historical figures, like to not learn from that or not take credit to that just seems very naive and ignorant.
Yeah. Yeah, one of our great national leaders that is undervalued in my estimation was Colin Powell. And Colin Powell, one of his famous he had 13 tenets for life, all of which are gold. But one of them was optimism is a force multiplier. You think about that, and that's from one of our great leaders at the highest echelons of military service and, governmental service. And he dealt with a lot of crises, but I like that a lot. Optimism is a force multiplier, which again, a lot of time, I've said for forever, like this is a vital mission that we have, and we have to win, meaning we have to persevere, we have to be diligent, we serve the citizens, like the nation on a small scale in our jurisdictions depends on us, and we don't always have to play fair, but we have to win. And if one thing that we're going to do to not play fair in order to win is be optimistic, I think that's a wise tactical move.
Yeah, which even underlines the power of what you're saying because to look at Corey's career, I'll just say it's not been sunshine and rainbows. You train for the threats you can see, but what about the ones you can't? United Diagnostic Services brings hospital grade diagnostic technology directly to first responder agencies, making early detection of cardiovascular disease and cancer more accessible than ever. UDS provides comprehensive early detection programs using advanced ultrasound, CT calcium scoring, stress echoes, and innovative blood panels to identify potential health risks long before symptoms appear. It's proactive, on site, and built specifically for those who serve. Early detection saves lives and careers. Learn more at udshealth.com. Light Touch is a non medical wellness device designed to support calm, regulation, and more restful sleep in the midst of everyday stress. For first responders and other high stress professionals, it offers a simple way to support steadier functioning, recovery, and overall well being. To learn more, check out episode 317 or visit mylighttouch.com. We talked about some of the hard times the last few years, but you've written and spoken about losing a friend, losing a colleague. I'm curious if you can share a little bit
Yeah.
about that and processing that and what has helped you stay convicted in this really challenging job.
Yeah, sure. And I would challenge others. This is not the most comfortable thing, but when you deal with something, if you don't, if you don't share it, it can't help anybody else. But we went through, again, this is a pretty big city here. We went through about a 20-year period where we did not lose an officer in the line in to violence with malice, right? We had accidents and different things like that. And so I grew up in this culture kind of getting used to that. I had friends elsewhere that died in the line and that kind of thing, but we didn't experience it. And then 2023 in December, we had an officer murdered, a good friend of mine, by effectively a panicky, like strung out shoplifter, effectively. And that was awful. I mean, it hit us like a nuclear bomb. And his name was Sergeant Dale Nix. He was a friend of mine and a really good just a good human being. We dealt with that nuclear bomb and the ripple effects of that. And then fast forward merely 12 months. This is December of 2024. One of my really good pals, Michael Haran, was a detective here. He was also a lifetime Coast Guard operator, and he went on a call in uniform here and was effectively ambushed and murdered by like an actual evil person. You've seen this, Eric, too. There's a lot of bad in the world. Most of it's not truly evil. A lot of it's panicky, but this was an evil person that shot him multiple times, even after he was on the ground, and again over nothing. And so that hit, and that was 2 days before Christmas, 2024, and resonated through the agency and through the region. Honestly, like a nuclear bomb. And everybody processes that differently. And I remember kind of getting all my folks together on the different teams that I was with, and not counseling folks, because we're all the same and we all need to talk about these things. But I remember I told my folks a couple things, and I don't think they realized it, but I was talking to myself. And out, I got to hear myself, and it was helpful to me. And what I told them is everybody is going to process that differently. Just be honest about how you're processing it. If you're truly numb right now, that's okay. Be honest with it. If you're angry where you're thinking like crazy thoughts about retribution and vengeance, be honest with it. Say it to somebody else. Be honest. Don't feel like you have to mourn. Don't feel like you have to be in a puddle on the floor in the corner. For some people that may be the reaction, but whatever you're feeling is you, and that's okay, and be honest with it. And the other thing that we banded together. If anybody's never been to, I tell Americans all the time, just civilians, not cops, you should go to a police funeral at least once in your life. Pick a jurisdiction. I mean, unfortunately, they're happening a lot, but the funeral of an officer who died in the line with violence and like true malice, like a tragedy that you can't even speak of.
Mhm.
You go to those funerals, they are one of the hardest things to attend on the planet emotionally, and they are extremely, extremely honoring and cathartic. I mean, there's so many traditions that, and legacies that we have, from the riderless horses and the 21 gun salute to the bagpipes to the, taps being played. It is any one of those 5-minute segments of these long funerals is enough to, I mean, like, put you on the floor. I mean, they're very challenging. However, they are they're they help, cleanse your spirit. They help bond each other because we're all in there together. All of these tough guys, tough gals, balling, right? And that's okay. And in that space, it's extremely holy, and it's necessary. But you have to go through that together with other folks that you trust. Um, but it also wears on you. I'll be honest with you about this, Eric. At some point around that time, we were eating dinner at my house, and we talk about everything's on the table at my house. We have 3 kids, and we talk about world issues, and we talk about all, philosophy. We talk about whatever's going on. And after dinner, we had been talking about somebody who had passed on, and it was unrelated to police work. But my wife pulled me aside and she said, "Kory, I think you need to be aware. I think you need to be aware of how you're flippantly speaking about death outside of police stuff, but just speaking about it a bit too flippantly for normal conversation." And our,
Mhm.
our kids are perfectly fine; they trust me, but it had escaped my awareness. And I said, "Really? Like, I didn't. I did. I'm glad you told me. I had no idea." But we have to be able to recognize and track the effect that this level of trauma is having on us too, in order to care for ourselves and each other well. But we have to remember there's a an effect of living and dealing with this manner of trauma. But yeah, it's a weird job, man. I mean, we talk a lot about first responders, like we package first responders together. But one of the big deals that our firefighter brethren and sisters will never have to deal with is losing almost never is losing a comrade to violence with malice. I mean, on occasion you hear about firefighters assaulted, but it's not the same. They lose their brethren to like hazardous situations, but there's something about violence with malice that hits at the human heart, like at a deep, deep level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot there you said. I took a couple notes, but just even what you landed with, it reminds me back to where we started, which is like your wife essentially just doing this check, right? It's not a call out. It's just this like, "Hey, Kory," you know? And it's this thing of care, right? It goes back to that prong of honesty when you're talking about circling with your people and how people process, how they mourn or metabolize this. It's like, hey, like there are so many roads and options here, but just be honest with it, because
Yes.
what that makes me think about is this very open, supportive, peer support type of role that you put out as a leader. But also, like, yeah, everyone does have their own way. They all have their own relationship to that person or to this process or to how they conceptualize. Their families are going to process it differently. But if you're honest, right, which the only real way to be honest is to share, right, to step outside of your head, say the thing, because you're like, I'm going to go on a rampage. Then your buddies are going to be like, hey, power down, bro, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's go
Good.
do something constructive, right? Let's go
Yeah.
slam some weights or something, right? Because
Yeah.
that does go back to that inner circle. Like, who do you trust? And everyone needs someone. And I think that sometimes people hear this like, I am pretty pro therapy, but I want people to find the context that works for them.
That's
And
right.
sometimes it's your battle buddy, sometimes it's clergy, sometimes it's your dad, right?
That's
And
right.
so I do strongly believe everybody needs somebody, but I like how you outline that. From interviews to jail calls, Ditto Transcripts delivers fast, confidential, and court ready transcription for law enforcement agencies. Ditto is CJIS compliant and is already working with agencies all over the U.S., including the Washington State Patrol and the National Park Service Investigations Unit. Get started now at dittotranscripts.com. That's dittotranscripts.com. To hear details about all the applications of Ditto transcripts and exactly why this is a key solution for your organization's workload issues, check out episode 232. The other
Yeah.
thing too is like I really appreciate your demonstration of compassion, because I think there's a lot of connectedness with purpose and community and beyond, when you say yes, like there's a lot of violent actors out there, a lot of potentially even murderers, but it was panicky, right? I hear a lot of compassion and empathy there. Is that something you've always had? Because that's something that I would not have been able to reconcile very well as a 20 something year old police officer,
Yeah.
because
Sure.
when that kind of stuff happened, they're scumbag, they're scum of the earth. But I see and I hear the differentiation now at my stage in life.
Yeah, and it was, and again, this is 2-3 years removed. I don't want to. I am. Look, I can go full Viking right now over getting cut off in traffic. Don't be don't be dissuaded. But when you look, again, we had to love on and care for our people when Sergeant Nix was murdered. And again, it was a murder. However, it was not premeditated. A young guy getting caught. He actually was intervening off duty, which I think is just an absolute baller move. Like extremely, like that's a protector. Dale was intervening in the off duty in the middle of a what appeared to be a larceny or a robbery, and the kid shot him. Young guy, reactively, still, like truly should pay the consequences for that. But to be able to have to kinda deal with that alongside after a year with Haran's killer and him, hearing his cold-blooded jail calls after the fact, recognizing, like, that was just an evil human being that can't exist in society, like, we have to remove him, somebody has to do that, and what, uh, Mike Haran did that with his life, removed that guy from society, and that's, again, a valorous last few minutes on the planet, like, I greatly respect that, but it's, just recognize, I've said this before. When I first got into policing, I saw the world very black and white, like a lot of 20-year-olds do,
Yeah, me too.
22-year-olds do. Yeah, everything's black and white. There's good, there's bad. I'm on the good side. Everybody that I'm gonna arrest is on the other side. They're bad. And that is over the last 27 years, like that has tempered in me. And I have truly come to realize, like, outside of a couple bad decisions, like I could be on that side too. There's a book,
Yeah.
you've spoken about books, Eric. There's a book called Ordinary Men that I read years ago that really rocked my thinking about just humanity. And Ordinary Men effectively tracks a Polish police force right around the beginning of World War II, who were basically conscripted into Hitler's some of their enforcement forces, and it was all voluntary. These Polish police battalion early on said, if at any point, if y'all want out, you can be out. Just say it. And they didn't. And within a course of about 2 years, they went from being municipal cops to executing Jewish pregnant mothers. Like, we have to be very, very careful that, we like to think about things like World War II. We think about that we'd be the heroes, but a lot of times that's not the case. Like that kind of travesty happens because courage is rare. and I could be one of the bad guys. I have to keep that right up front when I'm policing in order to justly look at folks objectively.
And I think that's the key. And again, that's like the next layer. I would say even kind of your upper echelon of empathy to really see what else's perspective might be like that we can't really comprehend, right? Like I can only look at the world through my lens, but I can
Yes.
try, right? And I think you said it right there. I've met many people, civilians or otherwise, but also sworn officers that through conversations, these deep conversations that happen at like 3 in the morning, they really can't get there or they haven't gotten there. And maybe hopefully they can one day, but to say that like, no, I am good, I do things like the values, and no, I would never have been brought up in this like gang culture or this other thing. I'm like, I don't know, like, you know, I feel very fortunate, and I think luck, being blessed, all these things, this conglomerate of people that really looked out for me and took
Yes.
me in, you know, my mom being one, but like, you know, I didn't have a great relationship with my dad. And that is it's almost formulaic in what leads people to really bad circles and really bad circumstances sometimes.
You're right. Yeah. No, no doubt. And we have to keep that. You really do have to keep that up front. And it helps Seneca or Marcus Aurelius, or somebody said, be kind with everybody that you deal with because everybody's fighting a battle that you don't know anything about. Like that's really important. My life experiences are like yours, man. I was wholly fortunate, and I try to stay grateful about that because I we are all the same. We are all the same. Have all the same capabilities for good or bad. I think that's real important.
Yeah, you bring up these Stoic philosophers. I love it. I think this is Marcus Aurelius. It said something. We're talking about values and we're talking about courage, and it is a slippery slope, right? If you compromise your values, that is what takes you down that path that you explained in Ordinary Men. But something to the effect of Aurelius said, you know, waste no time arguing. Was it Aurelius? Now I'm doubting it, but one of
Yeah.
those
No, you're
dudes,
you're
right?
right.
Like
Yep.
waste no time arguing with a good man is like basically like demonstrate it, right? Like
Yes.
just do the thing and
Yeah, and he
model.
yeah, and he effectively, not he was talking about action, the difference between action and philosophy. You find yourself acting courageously, pretty soon you have become a courageous person. You find yourself acting proactively, right? And folks talk about toxic masculinity, and I prefer the. I think that's wholeheartedly improper, but toxic passivity, right? So you find yourself acting decisively for good. Pretty soon you'll find yourself becoming that person. So yeah, I'm with that too. Action precedes belief a lot of.
And I like that too, going back to optimism, right? I like to say like I'm a possibilist. Like I'm not really the optimist yet, but
That's
I
great.
like to question like, okay, what else could be true or what could be possible? But a lot of people from the outside, they tell me like they love what one of my friends said, a relentless optimist.
It's great.
And I was like, man,
That's a
that's
compliment.
quite a label.
That's great.
But I
Yes.
feel like it's because I try, you know, and I don't identify with that, but I'd like to work towards it and continue to work
Yes.
towards it. But it's that same thing, like what you practice or what becomes permanent, and it's reps, right? Just like anything else.
That's right. And that's cool when you're in a position of leading a group of folks, whether you have a squad or, I was a patrol captain here when I had 85 or so folks under my care. I've got vice narcotics now. We've got about 25 detectives. But giving them the same, handing that off to them, with the ideas of commander's intent or decentralized command, but the idea of creativity. Like I tell the folks all the time, I want to hear innovative, aggressive, assertive ideas. And they may be the greatest new idea. They may be a disaster. I want you to make creative, aggressive, innovative mistakes. Like it's perfectly fine. That is okay. We do not have to be right 100% of the time. We don't have to be right 50% of the time, but we have to be reasonable all the time. But this is the vision. Y'all go forth and surprise us with what you come up with. It'll be awesome. And as long as you're, operating legally, ethically, morally, go forth. Like I will greenlight any innovative, aggressive idea if it's legal, ethical, moral. It could be some wild idea. It may be the next great police innovation. You have no idea. And if it's a disaster, that's okay. The second best thing to knowing what to do is knowing what not to do. So we can take that off the table and listen to make a new innovative, aggressive mistake. That's the way to lead, in my 2 cents.
I love it, and it's also how you build leaders, right? Because if
That's right.
you, I mean, we all know what micromanaging looks like. I tried it on as a new supervisor. I think that a lot of people, they see it and then they
Yes.
care, and there's a fear, right? And you don't want to be irresponsible. You don't want to be hands off, too hands off. There's a balance. However, when you have a trusted, capable team and you give them appropriate direction and guardrails and supervision, right? Not just
Yes.
like, hey, just I'll check back in with you in a month and see what happened in the interim.
Right. That's
But that
negligent.
is how you build leaders. That is how you build confidence and people developing their own style and philosophy.
Yeah, let them step. I mean, I like my folks to step to the edge of where I'm comfortable. Like, go way out there. Again, if it's legal, ethical, moral, aggressive, innovative, assertive, go way out to where I'm barely comfortable, and that's probably a good place for growth. And further, like you said, Eric, trusting your folks. I remember I was a watch commander years ago, and one of our sergeants called me, and a lot of times young sergeants, like you said, they will, for liability's sake, they'll check in with the boss. And so on
Hmm.
watch command, you get all these phone calls. Most of them are just not even necessary. But I had a young sergeant who was squared away, and he called, and his first line on the phone was, he said, "Hey, LT, I know I don't need to call you about this, but," and I hung up the phone, just hung it up, dead nuts in the middle of the sentence. And I didn't call him back. 2 minutes later, he called back and said, "Hey, I think we got disconnected." I said, "No, we didn't get disconnected, Sarge. I hung up on you. I was helping you. You told me I don't need to tell you this. You're probably right.
Hmm.
Like, I trust you. You're a shot caller. You make good decisions." I said, "If you really are not going to sleep well, and unless you run this past me, go ahead. But I'm telling you, I would be willing to bet you're right now because you're a professional." So yeah, giving those folks the authority and the latitude to make errors, as long as they're in good faith, that is the greatest gift from a boss, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that feedback loop, right? And it's also, I heard a lot of support in that, right? I heard a lot of confidence like injected back into the person. And I've
Yes.
heard a lot of different styles that I like, which is hey, if you're that person calling, it's great just to say, I have a plan, right? I love to hear that
Yep.
you have a plan and you have a
Yes.
direction. You're not asking like, do I need
That's
to
right.
do this or that? And you're
Yep.
like, well, consult your manual because it's in there.
That's
Yeah, so,
right.
like, there is a such thing as a good and not so good question. Now, we could totally take it off on a tangent there, but what I'd like to return to is kinda your resolve, like, you are closer to the end of your career than the
Sure.
beginning, I think that's fair to say.
Yep.
What has helped you? I hear all this positivity, and there's been something I've been marinating on lately is, how do we find more wonder? How do we find more moments of awe and joy?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
something you think about, and where might you find that? Because
Yeah.
I suspect that is part of the equation of staying positive.
Yeah. I think there's it's a big question, big pregnant question. I think there's a couple big ideas, and then there's all manner of other prescriptions. But I think one of them is caring for yourself. I mean, I know that gets a little bit woo woo right now, and there's people making whole businesses about self care and all this, and that, it can get a little gooey. But honestly, like you mentioned earlier, you have to take care. If the oxygen mask falls, you have to put it on yourself first, or you're ineffective. Knowing yourself, like for me, one of the big daily, it's set in stone, is the workout every morning for 27 years. And my workouts are boring. 3 days a week I run a 5K on the trail. I did it this morning. And 2 days a week I lift, which is only and always push-ups, pull-ups, and sit-ups, like I'm in a prison. And that is what I've been doing for 27 years. But I'm telling you, if I don't start the day fighting that lion, the rest of the day will feel worse. But when I start the day with one of the harder things that I'm gonna do today, the rest of the day gets very digestible.
Yeah.
And it's good for my mind. It clears everything out. I mean, that is super important. The second thing is again, I can't overemphasize surrounding yourself with the right folks. You mentioned it earlier. You're the average of the 5 people you associate with the most. Look at that circle, right? It may shock you in a bad way, but think about your personal culture. My personal culture is study, betterment, family, God, the police force, like, working hard, not half-assing things. Like, that's that's my ethos. And so I have found my 5 or 6 pals, and we share cultures. Our culture is, and we could write a succinct paragraph about it. And right now, I could take the phone call. Like, I could take a phone right now and call any one of those 5 or 6 dudes, and I could say, "What was your workout today?" Not, "Did you work out, or are you gonna work out?" Because that's what we work out. I could call any one of those guys right now and say, "What are you reading right now? Give me a book title. I need a new one. I just finished." And they are reading, because we read and we study and we try to better, right? So you surround yourself with those folks who are gonna challenge you in the right ways. Therefore, you can ease out all of the other noise and the nonsense of the critics who don't count. And then the third thing, Eric, is I think this is super basic, but seeing the world with a lens of gratitude. I mean, intentionally. You can start the day like a pinball in a pinball machine and be reactive to everything, right? And who knows what today will bring? And then ping, 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 you're everywhere. And your mindset is all you're unsettled. You can't make a call. You can't look around and prioritize and execute. But if you just looking at the world with gratitude. Here's an example. This is a great example. And I talk about this simple example a lot. In this city right now, there's about, I don't know, there's probably 60-ish patrol officers protecting my city right now. Right now, there is I know this, a 22-ish year old who's gonna get called to a domestic argument at a residence. That 22-year-old who's never been married, has no idea about it, drank a Monster Energy this morning and is listening to Justin Bieber. They're gonna go into somebody else's house right now, and they're gonna referee a marital dispute between people who have been married longer than that cop's been on the planet, and in about 6 to 7 minutes, that officer's gonna leave, and it's gonna be better. And they do that all over our country in all 4 time zones right now. And that is a miracle. And we don't see it with the proper lens. If you don't see that and you're like, that is astounding and miraculous that our young men and women are doing that kind of stuff. And that's a simple example. I mean, all the heroic stuff that we, give them medals for, but they do that all day. Like, that's a miracle. And I can see it that way, or I can see it as like, "What'd you do today?" "I went to a domestic. I solved this. I had a traffic crash, dealt with a fraud at Walmart," but no, that's a miracle. Like, you made a corner of the world better in a few minutes, and you're not really thoroughly trained to give marital counseling, but you made it better. I think we enter the day looking for gratitude. I think it'll just make this great excursion, like Fitzgerald said, even more rich and deep.
Yeah. I love it. And I hope that there are people listening to this and maybe they are flirting with that cynicism right now, or maybe they're sending it to someone that is in that rut because we don't see a lot of the big things and everyone has their really big moments, but a lot of times you don't have the feedback loop to say, hey, things got better. We go on to the next one, on to the next one. But how many times did you prevent a robbery or prevent a death because you took a drunk off the street? We know these things to be logically true, but we don't give ourselves the credit for that in this team that we work. And so
Good.
I do
That's good.
invite people to think about that as we kind of bring all these threads together, all these really constructive, positive loops. So, Kory, it's been a fantastic conversation. Please, you've covered a lot of ground. You've given us a lot to think about. What would you want to leave the listeners with, and where can they reach out and find you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. Like I said earlier, I don't exist on the open internet. The only thing I have on the open internet is articles, podcasts. I write a lot. I write a lot out of, speaking of self therapy, it's when I get hacked off about something.
Yeah,
I'll
likewise.
1,200 words later, I feel better, and it goes to I write for Police One, I write for Police Magazine. I've done a lot of the other stuff and podcasts and that kind of thing, but LinkedIn is the best spot. But no, I would just, for the young folks, man, I just want to say thanks. Like, I've been talking about gratitude anywhere where I go and teach or speak. I always, if it's an audience of law enforcement, I always part with this. I look at it, I make them look me in the face, and I thank them because they don't get that enough. And I tell a room of 20-year-olds and 50-year-olds all intermingled together, like, as just Kory, as an American citizen who is just grateful for what y'all are doing. You don't hear it enough, and I'm really appreciative. Like, I really do appreciate that. And the second thing that I tell them is this, and I'll pass this on to your folks in closing, is years and years and years ago when I got into the profession, there were a lot of perks to this job, intangibles, like you didn't pay for a lot of meals and folks were, you could go to career day in uniform. Most of those are gone, unfortunately. The only one that we have left that is up to us to maintain, and we have to, is that we take care of each other, right? I've met you this morning. I see you as a brother. I see everybody that chooses to wear this shield as a brother, a sister, a teammate on the same family. And if you need something from me, I take great pride in getting, and I get them all the time, phone calls, texts from other folks elsewhere. I will legitimately stop what I'm doing and help you solve your problem. You need a professional advice. You need a help on a case. You need a connection. You need a barbecue restaurant recommendation, a hotel hookup. Like, I will stop. Yeah, I will stop what I'm doing and help you out. The other side of that is, if I call you, Eric, after this, man, we're brothers. And if I need something where you're at, I'm going to say, Eric, I need this. I need you to do this. And I'm gonna kind of expect you to do it because that's what
Yeah.
family team does. And so let's hold that fabric up. That's up to us totally.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kory. It's been
Yeah,
fantastic.
you got it, pal.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.